You lost something today. Maybe it was small, maybe it was enormous. Maybe it happened years ago and your brain still hasn't let go of it. And right now, somewhere underneath everything else you are thinking about, you are still carrying it. That feeling has a name in modern psychology. But the real answer, the tool that actually dissolves it, is far stranger. It's over 2000 years old. It was written by a man who lost his child, by an emperor who watched his empire collapse around him, by a slave who had no freedom, no position, and no power over anything in his life. And somehow, all three of them arrived at the same conclusion. You don't have to suffer the way you are suffering. The ancient Stoics were not cold people. That's the first myth to destroy. They didn't teach you to suppress your emotions or pretend nothing hurts. What they taught us was something far more precise. They taught us to see loss for what it actually is. And once you see it clearly, something shifts. Epictetus was born into slavery in ancient Rome around 50 AD. He had nothing. His master once broke his leg deliberately just to see if he would flinch, and Epictetus said calmly that if he kept twisting his leg, the leg would break. It broke. He never raised his voice. He never collapsed. Later in his life, he became one of the most influential philosophers in the ancient world. Teaching in a small room with no furniture, his words eventually reached the Roman emperors. His central idea was this: there are things inside your control and things outside your control. Almost everything that causes pain falls into the second category, and you have been spending your life trying to control it. This is not a motivational poster, it is a surgical diagnosis. Psychologist Albert Ellis, writing in the 20th century, essentially rediscovered this same idea when he founded rational emotive behavior therapy. He found that what causes human suffering is rarely the event itself, it is the belief the mind wraps around the event. Epictetus called these beliefs as opinions. Ellis called them irrational beliefs, different words but same anatomy. You don't grieve the thing, you grieve the story you told yourself about what that thing meant to you. Think about the last time you lost something: a relationship, a job, a version of yourself you thought you were becoming. The loss was real, but underneath the grief, if you dig into it honestly, you find a belief. The belief that things were supposed to go in a certain way. The belief that you had a right to that outcome, that the universe owed you that specific future. The Stoics call this attachment a false judgment. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 AD and wrote privately in his journal every night, a journal which is better known now as the Meditations, wrote something that sounds almost brutal when you first read it. He said, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." He wasn't dismissing pain, he was redefining the frame around it. Every single thing you have ever loved has always been temporary. You knew this. You just didn't feel it. The Stoics wanted you to feel it, not as a threat, but as liberation. They had a practice for this. They called it negative visualization. The term sounds dark. The experience is not. The exercise is simple. Sit with the things you love the most and deliberately imagine losing them: your health, your relationships, your home, your sense of who you are. Not as a pessimistic spiral, but as a deliberate confrontation with what was always true. Those things were never permanent. You were always holding them temporarily. Researcher Sonia Libomirsky at the University of California, Riverside has studied hedonic adaptation for decades. The way humans rapidly return to a baseline happiness after both positive and negative life events. One of our core findings is that we underestimate how quickly we adapt to loss and how much we catastrophize what recovery feels like. The Stoic intuited this 20 centuries before the data existed. Grief is real, but your mind magnifies its permanence. Here is what Stoicism actually asks you to do with loss: not suppress it, not to rush past it, but to separate the two things that your brain has fused together without your consent: the event and the meaning you assigned to it. The event is real, the meaning is chosen. Marcus Aurelius lost children, he lost colleagues he trusted, He spent most of his reign at war, away from everything he loved, commanding armies in brutal cold along the Danube River. And every single night he sat down and wrote reminders to himself, not triumphs, just reminders. Things like, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. He was not a natural stoic person by his temperament. He worked at it. He practiced it daily because it did not come naturally to him. This is the detail people miss. Stoicism is not a personality type, it is a discipline. The discipline begins with one question. When something is lost, ask yourself, was this ever truly to be mine? That question is not rhetorical, it is the entire practice. Because what you discover almost every time is that you were holding something that was always passing through, a relationship that had a natural shape, a period of life that had a beginning and an end, a version of yourself that needed to dissolve for the next version to form. The Stoics call this Amor Fati, love of fate, not resignation, not passivity, but a total willingness to let what happens to just happen and to find inside this acceptance that something solid cannot be taken away from you, because almost everything can be taken away from you: your health, your status, your people, your plans. But your orientation towards what happens, your judgment, your response, your values, that remains yours. Epictetus wrote, men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about things. This is what modern cognitive behavioral therapy was built on. Psychologist Aaron Beck, who pioneered the cognitive behavioral therapy in the 1960s, traced emotional distress directly to automatic negative thought patterns. Beck's work and Stoic philosophy overlap so precisely that therapists today openly describe CBT as applied Stoicism. The ancient framework had the clinical structure. The modern science filled in the mechanism. So, what does this mean for you right now, today, with whatever you're doing? It means that the loss is real, but the narrative around it is not fixed. It means your mind has fused two things together: the fact of what happened and a story about what that fact means to you, about the future, about your worth, or your safety, or your chances. And you can, with practice, pull those two things apart. You start small, not by solving the grief, but asking the question: was this always mine to keep? Was this outcome always guaranteed? And if it wasn't, which is almost all the cases, then what you're grieving is not the loss of something you owned. You're grieving the loss of expectation. Expectations are not losses, they are ideas about the future that didn't survive the contact with reality. The moment you see this distinction, something loosens. Not immediately and not entirely, but there is a shift. The weight of the loss doesn't disappear, but it stops feeling like evidence of something broken about the world or about you. It starts feeling like what is actually is: nature, moving, movement, time doing what it does, it changes. A story reaching its end so the next one can begin. Marcus Aurelius wrote this when he was alone in a military tent at the edge of the empire, surrounded by cold and loss. Confine yourself to the present, not the future you lost, not the past you are replaying, the present, which is the only place where the thing you actually need can be found. And here you are, carrying something and hearing this. That is the present. The ancient Stoics, writing in a world with no therapy, no safety nets, no certainty of anything, asked one question: not how do I stop feeling this, but what is actually true right now? And what can I choose inside that truth? The question is still available to us right now in whatever we are holding on to. You thought you lost something, and maybe you did. But what the Stoics found, what Epictetus found in his chains, what Marcus Aurelius found at the edge of his empire, and what every other person who has survived grief eventually finds out, is that the only thing that was always truly yours was never the thing you lost. It was the capacity to choose what to do next. That capacity is still here. It never left.